Welcome back to All This Math. This is Professor Parker, and for this lesson, we're going to do some more Praxis prep, dealing with some algebra concepts. And actually, I like this video because in this video, we're going to talk about y equals mx plus b. And I know there'd be a lot of y equals mx plus b slander out there in the world, but in this particular lesson, in this video, we're going to talk about one of the uses of y equals mx plus b. All right. So as I said, this is some Praxis prep. See, right? And so this is one of the typical problems or questions that you might see on the Praxis exam when you're trying to get your teacher certification. So let's read it and try to understand the information that we're being given and then figure out how to come up with the correct answer. All right, so it says Kia gets paid a weekly salary and a commission for every sale that she makes. So just consider it like a sales job. Just try to, whenever you're dealing with word problems, my suggestion is for you to always try to incorporate yourself into the problem. So if you read this problem, try to think back to whenever you had a sales job, like in your real life or your lived experience when you had a sales job, or when somebody close to you that you knew had a sales job, no matter where they worked, whether they were selling cars, whether they were selling furniture, whether it was, whether they was whatever they was selling, if it was for a company and they got a salary and then they got a commission on top of their salary. Try to visualize that, right? All right, so we have this little chart here. We have this top row represents the amount of sales that Kia makes. And we have this bottom row that represents the pay that she gets, right? As a result, the pay which corresponds to the number of sales. So when she got paid $380, she made 2 sales. When she got paid $580, she made 7 sales. When she got paid $460, she made 4 sales. When she got paid $620, she made 8 sales. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, why don't we just, just divide 380 by 2, and then we get 190, and that means she's getting 190 per sale. Well, I like what you're thinking if you are thinking that, but you got to consider that she gets a salary and she gets a commission, right? Commission is what you get paid for your sales only, right? Commission is tied to your sales. Salary is something you're going to get paid regardless, even if you don't make no sales, right? Now, I know there's some jobs that pay straight commission, right? And some people like those jobs because some people are just hustlers. They like to get out there and just make their sales and they're not worried about it. They don't need a salary. But then other jobs guarantee you a salary and you might not get as much in terms of commission as the trade-off. But in this particular job, she gets a salary and she gets a commission. All right. Now let's look at the question though. Which of the following equations represents Kia's weekly pay? So we got 4 choices here, choice A, B, C, and D. And we got these different equations. And here they're hitting us with the y equals mx plus b. All right. Y equals m. M is represented by this number, your X, your plus sign, and the B is represented by this number, right? Now, B could also be negative. Subtracting 200 is the same thing as adding a negative 200. So it still falls into the realm of Y equals MX plus B, you know what I mean? So let's think about this, right? Whenever you see a problem like this, right? When you got a chart, when there's like a salary and a commission, and you're dealing with Y equals MX plus B. Whenever you're dealing with y equals mx plus b, what you want to consider is, let me first write this down, y equals mx plus b, right? You want to ask yourself, based on the information I have, what is my independent variable and what is my dependent variable? That's first things first. You need to first know that and identify that. What is my independent variable and what is my dependent variable? Meaning, which thing depends on the other? And since they give us this chart, you have to ask yourself, is the pay independent or are the sales independent? Well, I should say, is the amount of her pay independent or is the number of sales independent, right? And the y variable is your dependent variable. The x variable is your independent variable. All right, so you got dependent, independent, dependent, independent. Now, our job is to take the information that you're given in the problem and determine which one is dependent and which one is independent. So you can say, all right, well, is the amount of her pay dependent on the number of sales she makes? Or is it the other way around? Is the amount of her sales dependent on the amount of pay she gets? And I know some people might look kind of too deep into this and they might say, well, if I'm getting paid more, then I'm going to make more sales. Don't look at it like that. Just try to deal with strictly the numbers, right? We know that her paycheck or the payment amount she gets is going to depend on the number of sales, right? So if she makes 2 sales, her pay is going to be $380. If she makes more sales, notice how her pay goes up, right? So her pay is dependent on the amount of sales. Her pay is dependent on the amount of sales. So her pay is the dependent variable. Her pay is the dependent variable. So what you might want to do is just put a little Y right here just to identify it. And that means her sales, or the number of sales, is going to be her independent variable. So we put an X right here. All right. So you got your X and you got your Y. You got your X and you got your Y. Right. So you got Y equals MX plus B. Right. So now, because this is multiple choice, what we can simply do is plug and play. This is like a plug and play situation, because we also want to implement some test taking strategies, right? And plug and play works. So basically what we're saying is, if we look at choice A, her pay is equal to 90, which is a dollar amount, $90 times the number of sales. Because remember, we said X is her number of sales. Y is her amount of pay. So her pay equals $90 times the number of sales plus 200. That could be the answer. We're going to plug some numbers in and see if that works. But let's look at choice B. This choice says her pay is equal to $90. And we know that 90 stands for dollars. Stands for dollars because it's being multiplied by the number of sales, right? Just like when you calculate your paycheck, if you work out for a job that pays you hourly, you're going to calculate it by multiplying the number of hours you work times your pay rate, whether it's $20 an hour, $25 an hour, $15 an hour, however much it is, You're going to multiply the dollar amount by the number of hours or the number of sales or what have you. But then it says minus 200. So that's a little questionable, minus 200. Why, in order to calculate your pay, would they be subtracting 200? Now, we're not talking about taxes. We're not talking about, if somebody getting child support took out of their check, we ain't talking about all that. We're not talking about, Social Security, FICA, all them other deductions. We're not talking about none of that. We're just talking about salary and commission. Salary and commission. So these are things that you're going to receive. So therefore, these amounts should be added to each other. So therefore, we can rule out choice B automatically, and we can rule out choice D automatically, because that's also including some subtraction, right? So we don't need no subtraction. So basically, we only have to test out choice A and choice C. Now, how do we test these out? We test them out by taking the values that we're given in the chart and seeing if we end up with a true statement in our equation, right? For every pair of numbers. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, if Y is your pay or your dependent variable and X is the number of sales or your independent variable, then what should happen is 380, if I deal with these two numbers, right? If I deal with this X and Y pair, then 380 should be equal to 90 times 2, because that's 2, plus 200. 90 times 2 is 180. 180 plus 200 is 380. And 380 was Y. So it works for this pair, right? It works for this pair. But you can't this is another mistake that I want you to avoid. Avoid this mistake. Avoid getting overly happy and saying, oh, well, it works for the first pair of numbers. Cool. Let me just choose this as my correct answer. It's got to work for every pair of numbers. It's got to work for every pair of numbers in the chart, because it could be a situation where one pair of numbers works, but the other numbers don't work. Or it could be a situation where 3 pairs of the numbers work and one of them don't work. If they don't all work, or they don't all, when I say work, if they don't all give you a true statement where the left side of the equation is the same as the right side of the equation after you do your calculations, then it don't work for all. Then it don't work at all. It's got to work for everything. It's got to work for every pair of numbers that you're given within the chart or within the table or within the graph that you see or within the given information that you have. All right. It's got to work for everything. So it works for 2 and 380. That's cool. But now let's go on to 7 and 580. So what's 90 times 7? That's 630. So I already know this ain't going to work, right? Because my Y value is 580, and I'm already over 580 by doing 90 times 7. 90 times 7 is 630. And we got to know our multiplication facts. We should know that 9 times 7 is 63. We can pretend that 0 not even there at first. 9 times 7 is 63. Then we come back to reality. Attach the 0 to the 63, we get 630. So 90 times 7 is 630. And remember, because 7 is X, and this is my X value. 90 times 7 is 630. 630 plus 200 is 830. 830 and 580 are not the same thing. 830 and 580 are not the same thing. So because this pair of numbers does not give us a true statement, we know that A is wrong. So now, do we need to even test out this pair and this pair? No, because all pairs of numbers must work in order for this to be a valid answer. Once you realize that one pair of numbers does not work, you don't got to worry about that question and answer no more. You don't got to worry about it. So cross them off, boom. And now, based on the process of elimination, we know choice C must be correct because one of these has to be the correct answer. Now, if it said none of the above, if that was a choice, if choice E was none of the above, then you'd have to work out choice C to make sure that choice C works in order to know if you need to rule that out or not, right? So we already know that B was wrong because of the minus 200. D was wrong because of the minus 300. Like, why would you be subtracting, right? Unless, because that's like saying like the job is going to make you pay them money, right? But this is about your paycheck, right? And again, we're not talking about FICA and, Social Security and, insurance deductions. We're not talking about none of that. We're just talking about salary and commission. Those are things that should be added to your paycheck, right? On a regular basis. Now, sometimes, if you want to get technical, some jobs, when you work commission, you get chargebacks, but that's like something additional, right? Like if you sell something one week, you get paid for it, then the customer returns it the next week. And then, so they take that back out of your check later on. That's something different. That's extra. This problem isn't even getting into all that, right? But let's look at choice C. Now, normally on the test, in order to save time and conserve time, you would just choose C and just keep it moving, go on to the next question. But here we got some time. So I'm gonna just, illustrate or demonstrate that why C is in fact the correct answer. So C is the correct answer because let's plug in our X and Y values, So Y is 380 on this side is equal to 40 times 2, right? Plus 300. 40 times 2 is 80. 80 plus 300 is 380. And we had 380 over here. So it works for the first pair of numbers, all right? Then we go to the second pair of numbers. Plug in 7. 40 times 7, 280, because 4 times 7 is 28. 40 times 7 is 280. 280 plus 300 is 580. So it works for the second set of numbers. Then we go to the third set of numbers. 40 times 4, 160. 160 plus 300 is 460. So it works for the third pair of numbers, all right? Then we go, last but not least, the last pair of numbers. 40 times 8 is 320. 320 plus 300 is 620. And that's my Y value. So all four of these pairs of numbers, these X and Y coordinate pairs, right, satisfy this equation and this representation of Y equals MX plus B, all right? And again, what this problem also shows is that anytime we're dealing with paychecks, anytime we're dealing with commission, salary, whatever, you're dealing with paychecks, you have to calculate what your paycheck is. You're using Y equals MX plus B. Now, I know a lot of us, we took algebra in school and we never learned that that's what we were using it, could be using it for. You learned how to do that. A lot of us learned how to do that, but we didn't connect it to what we were doing in those algebra classes in high school or middle school and what we saw in the textbook necessarily. But you still were using it. So just understand, that Y equals MX plus B is relevant. It's very relevant. Don't listen to people that say it's not relevant. They just don't know that it's relevant. And actually, they're the ones that use it, right? They just don't know that that's what they're using. All right. So this is a good example of a praxis question or a praxis exam question. Find some more questions like this that involve Y equals MX plus B, that involve given information and linear relationships between two pieces of data, sales and pay, right? Or it could be something else. It could be anything. We could make charts with information with all types of different things in it, test scores, test scores based on number of hours that a person studies, like your test score on the Praxis, right? That would be a dependent variable based upon the number of hours of practice that you put in, right? You might find a question that talks about that, all right? But I'm saying all that to say that I've showed you how to do this. Now, the most important thing is for you to go get some more practice. So go find some practice problems, all right? Go find some practice problems, get to practicing, and I'll catch up with you on the next video. Peace.